Hello and welcome to the Pregnancy Playbook podcast. I'm Amy Strongman, your host, and I'm extremely passionate about this stage of womanhood. So whether you're just thinking about starting a family or in the early realms of motherhood, this is a space for you. We'll be talking all things preconception, pregnancy, birth, and beyond. Each episode, I'll be sitting down with some amazing guests, sharing insights, experiences, expertise, and much, much more. So whether we are debusting some myths or learning something new, this space is for you. We really want this stage of womanhood to feel like a little less overwhelming and a lot more magical. This is maternal alchemy, and this transformational stage of womanhood, it's at its best. So let's put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's join us, and let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy Playbook, where we talk all things pregnancy, birth and becoming with a big open heart and a healthy dose of curiosity. Today I'm joined by the incredible Amy Houghton, a wise, warm and deeply grounded midwife who has supported hundreds of women through pregnancy and birth. She's got a first-class degree, over 5 years of experience in the NHS, and she's currently working in the beautiful continuity of care team, which means she's with her women from the very first appointment right through to 1 month after their birth. But Amy's not just brilliant at what she does, she's also someone whose presence really stays with you. She's hugely passionate about supporting women, and she's even travelled to India to support pregnant women in socio-economical deprived areas, helping women navigate the complexities of pregnancy, childbirth and infant feeding in very challenging circumstances. Her care goes way beyond the clinic, and it's global, it's heartfelt, and it's really rooted with women at the centre. She's also a mother to 2 children and gave birth to her first baby in India. So welcome, Amy, to the Pregnancy Playbook. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you, Amy. It's so exciting to be here.
Thank you. So really, this episode is getting under the skin and diving deep into what is a midwife, what it means to be a midwife, what midwifery means to you, and really getting to know the person behind the uniform, which we never get a chance to do. And to begin with, I thought I'd just share with our viewers and listeners about how we met, which I think is really special because I was invited to one of your wellbeing events that you were putting on for midwives. And I just thought it was such a wonderful thing, an honour to be asked. And we had this wonderful room, didn't we, of lovely midwives just taking some yoga and some time for themselves. And you curated all of that. And then what was amazing was then lots of women in my kind of realm were saying, oh, I've got this amazing midwife. I've got this amazing midwife. And I was like, oh, what's her name? And they were like, oh, it's Amy. She's so great. And then it's just really transpired. So we met for coffee. We've got a shared passion for pregnancy and birth and preparing really for this incredible rite of passage. And I just really stuck with me. So it's been so nice getting to know you. So I thought someone else should listen and learn about you too.
Oh, thank you. So kind.
So I think we should probably start with how you came to be a midwife. But maybe even before that, kind of who are you, what were you, and what led you to this incredible kind of profession, if you call it that, or a calling?
Yeah, profession, calling, I call it both of those. And before I was a midwife, I was somebody that enjoyed travelling and adventure, and I was overseas a lot. I grew up overseas, and that was in my 20s. That was what life was all about, was just getting the most out of life that I possibly could. And I distinctly remember the moment I wanted to become a midwife.
Wow.
I was sitting in the back of a taxi in Hong Kong with my then boyfriend, now husband. We'd been out for dinner, and I received a text message. I don't think WhatsApp was around at that time. And it said, the baby's here, it's a boy, and all is well. And it was a friend of mine. We weren't perfectly close, but she was in my wider circle of friends. And I just felt this deep wonder and awe about how it could be that only days before I'd seen her pregnant, and now they were 2. They were 2 people, a mum and a baby, and how her body had grown this baby and how it had now birthed it. And I sat in that taxi just staring at the photo. And obviously my husband probably thought I was cooing over the baby, but I wasn't. I was wondering about how it must be to bring life into this world. And I went straight home and started looking up jobs around it, which sounds ridiculous because I feel like everyone knows that there's a job called a midwife, but it didn't really occur to me at that time. And I'd always been interested in medicine or care or something like that. So those had been careers I'd looked at, but midwifery had never come to the forefront. So I spent a few weeks looking into it and realised this is it. This is what I want to do.
Wow, that is an amazing kind of like drop in of like, oh, this is it. And also when it's a friend as well, it's sort of, they're sort of on your path as well at the same time of life. And you're like, that's, oh, you've done that. I didn't realize it for a long time, actually. I remember one of my really good friends, she'd had her baby, but it didn't really click until I had my own, actually, the magnitude of, what had just happened, really. So,
and I think that's it. My sister had had a couple of babies before this friend, and I had been present, not at the birth, but I'd looked after the younger ones while she'd been in labour and things like that, and had found it awe-inspiring and interesting. But there was something pivotal about that moment where I just thought, how does this happen? How do we grow these babies and then birth them? And I realised I wanted to know more. I wanted to know a lot about the biology and the science, but then there was this real curiosity around the woman at the centre of it, and what must it be like? And I wasn't in the position at that point to have children myself, but I knew it would be on my path as well. So there was a kind of desire to just learn everything I could about it.
Wow. And so then when you became a student midwife, what were your kind of first experiences like then, having had this kind of real feeling about babies and then actually witnessing it, or witnessing childbirth?
Yeah, witnessing childbirth is incredible, as you know.
I do. It's such a gift. Yes.
It is. And by the time I became a student midwife, I'd had my own 2 children.
Oh, okay.
And I'd had really positive experiences, not the experiences I had wanted them to be, but they were really positive nonetheless. And I went in fairly open-minded to student midwifery, but it was still quite eye-opening, even though I felt like I was going in with my eyes open. And I remember my first ever witness of a birth it was late November. It was very cold. It was registered as the coldest night of the year. I was on call. We do as student midwives as well. And I got the call, drove out to this house, icy conditions, got there. The midwife was already there. She was having her 7th baby, I think.
Wow.
And she was at home and she was in a pool and she was quiet. And I just held her hand and sat with her. I'd never met her before. And her children came down periodically throughout the birth and went back upstairs, and her partner was there just milling about. And it was truly magical. It really was. And I remember the buzz that I got from that. And it was more about, the experience of just kind of being with her. And that's what it is about. Midwifery is about being with the woman. But there is something, transformative about watching someone bring life into the world. So,
oh, it's amazing. Gosh, how lucky to see that as well. I mean, it's rare. I think it is rare for midwives.
Rare. It's really rare. And actually, I think it's been really helpful for me that was my first experience, because I've spoken to other midwives where their first, second, third, fourth, fifth experiences have been quite traumatic. And that sets you up on a pathway then. That's what you then know of birth, particularly if your own experiences have been traumatic prior to that. Whereas for me, I'm very fortunate that my own experiences were positive, and my first experiences as student midwife were positive as well. So I know that birth can be positive, and there's so much talk now about birth trauma and, all of that side of stuff, that I feel able still to hold on to the positivity of birth where I can. Not always, but
no, and it must be very hard. We'll touch upon about, your feelings on a day-to-day, but it must be tricky to hold on to that when the majority are being much more traumatic and not always physiological. So what a wonderful thing to have a little grasp on. And did you have somebody when you were sort of training, did you have a mentor, or do you still have a mentor, someone that has really kind of guided you to maybe keep that flame alight and actually, hold on to that wonderful experience?
Yeah, it's nice that you ask, did I have someone and do I still? Because absolutely at the time I had a great number of midwives that were inspiring. My first community midwife, who was present at that birth, was just a very gentle soul. She still practices midwifery. Just really easy, really calm, lovely. When she went off to have her own baby, I was then given another mentor who was different in many ways. She was very confident, very young. She was quite recently left university, and I loved that about her as well. I loved the fact that she just kind of knew what she was doing, even though she was young and sort of new to the profession. I thought that was great. And now I have I have lots of people that inspire me. But actually, the people that inspire me now are probably student midwives, because they're coming into this profession with wide open eyes. They have the same beliefs I did when I first started, which is that they want to make change. They want to bring their best selves to the profession. And that's really nice for me to work alongside them, because it keeps me invested in it. It's very easy to get lost in the system. And so to work alongside student midwives is still, quite a wonderful thing to do.
It's such a lovely perspective as well, of also having that like beginner's mind and seeing it from their views, and they're coming into it with this wonderful, I truly believe it must be a calling. My grandmother was a midwife, her mother was a midwife. Like, I generally feel there's this sort of sense of, maybe you feel like you were born to do it, I don't know, but really there's this sort of real sense of it's more than just a job. Like, it has to be, I'm sure.
It is, yeah.
Do you feel that?
Absolutely, I do. And I do remember actually, as a young child, I did some work experience in a maternity ward, if you can call it that. It was a very rural hospital in Kenya. And I found that really incredible. But I still didn't think about pursuing midwifery at that point. But I think actually it was there. It was in me. And I think for me, the reason I didn't pursue it at that point is not that I was selfish, but I wanted to live my life. I wanted to go about my life and do my own thing. And I don't feel that you can really do that as a midwife, because you have to give so much of yourself and so much of your life to the profession, the job, the calling, that actually you don't necessarily have that time to be selfish and go out and do stuff for yourself. So, yeah, I think it was there all along, but it just took a bit longer to kind of come out.
And I guess that the shift work as well doesn't help, because you just don't know how life is going to flow and ebb. No. And if you are someone who's loving to travel and explore, it's hard to kind of give your all. Do you find that still tricky, working in shift patterns? Now you're a mum as well. Yeah. It's hard.
I do find it really hard. I don't think I was designed for it. Some people are. Some people thrive on the night shifts. They thrive. I love the fact you get days off, today being one of them, midweek days off, great. But I also, as a consequence, I'll be working tomorrow, and my children will be off, and so will my husband. So, and I've worked Christmases, and I've worked Christmas Eve nights, and I've worked my children's birthdays, and that's really hard, and it takes its toll. It definitely does. So no, for me, it's not. That's something that you just have to take. If you want to do this job, which is such a privilege, then you have to take the rough with the smooth.
No, I love that you see it as that as well, a privilege to be with these women and work, because there's nothing better. I mean, I'm just reflecting on seeing sort of the birth that I was attended last 2 months ago, and it is like watching goddesses in motion and the awe and wonder. Does it still feel that newness even now? Like, I know you've been doing it for a long time now, but does it still have the magic?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If we witness what we describe as a beautiful birth, now that doesn't mean that other births aren't beautiful. It just means that they can be maybe a bit stressful or a bit hectic or a bit chaotic, and some births are. But, if we get the opportunity to witness what we might describe as a beautiful birth, then you skip home. Yeah, it's just
under the light of the moon.
Yeah, it is. It's just wonderful. Nothing can top it. I've always said that. I've always said that nothing can beat the highs of this job. But unfortunately, I don't think anything can beat the lows of this job either. So
yeah, we will definitely touch on that, I think, later on in our conversation. So we know obviously midwifery has been around for a long time, and we mentioned about midwife with woman, the kind of etymology of that. And it is ancient. And then obviously culturally there are so many sort of differences. And I know as someone who's travelled and seen lots of, different cultures at this time of creation, do you think we still have any kind of ancient traditions perhaps that we hold on to? Are there sort of superstitions that perhaps midwives still hold on to in the hospitals, or have you kind of started your own? Or I'm just curious just to see and explore that.
I think each midwife does have something that they probably hold on to. I think that you can't necessarily do this job without a bit of a spiritual kind of feeling or belief behind it. But I do also think a lot of it has been lost in the medicalisation of the system. For me, I really enjoy caring for women that aren't white British, that have come from a different culture or a different background, and learning about their family traditions or their birth traditions. I think that's really amazing, and we get to kind of, again, be a part of that, which is really special. I think there's lots that we still hold on to, or more actually that we go back to. I think, there's a lot now, things like skin to skin or affirmations during labour or water birth, candles, music. I think actually those were things that we did used to do. And then when birth moved into the hospital, we did them much less. And now we're kind of regaining that a little bit, which I think is great. But I dream of being a midwife in the ancient times, where maybe it was like a little straw hut in the middle of nowhere and you just had your wisdom and experience and intuition to go by. And I think that would be wonderful. I think some of that is a bit lost now in the medical system, but wouldn't that be a dream?
It would be. And I mean, it is, in some cultures, midwives were seen as, the priestess of the village and the healers and the wise women that would be called upon to come and, support this woman. Do you feel like that when you're in the birth room? Do you hold that energy?
Know. Yeah, I don't know if I do. I would like to think that I do. Whether or not I do or not is for, I suppose, the woman and her family to say.
Yeah.
I think that it's really important to engage with what they want and to bring that element of peace and sanctity if that's what they want or what have you. But I would love to think of myself like that. And maybe that's something that draws me to midwifery, is to see yourself as part of that kind of community and part of that experience. But whether or not I do is, I think you'd have to ask the women in my care.
I'd love to. I know some of them surely would say that. And I guess it is that part of being something sacred. It's holding space and like you just reflecting on, going back to a little mud hut somewhere, to just be you and the woman, the goddess in the room, just really stepping into her sovereignty and power would be, yes, it is very special. So just a little bit about you, midwives, Wonder Women, but have come up against, lots of things in the press, experiences, maternity services are, really feeling like they're on their knees. I don't want to get too political in the questioning, but it's more just, how are you finding it, as somebody who has been in it in the depths and, touched upon the student midwives coming in, but do you feel it when you're at work? Do you find it's, hard?
Yeah, I do, Amy. It's really hard. And I think it is getting harder, sadly. And I have open conversations with the student midwives that are coming in, because I qualified 6 years ago now, and that was pre-COVID. So COVID was a big deal. That changed a lot of things for us. And I've moved trusts in order to... I was very happy at my previous trust. I'm very happy at my current trust. But yes, I feel it. It's fraught. Some days are really fraught, and we're feeling the short staffing. I think as well, women are slightly more higher risk. Sorry to use that term, but that's the term we use. And, they are requiring more care. So, when they say that we have enough midwives for the women on the ward, yes, maybe, but maybe not for the care that they need. And I think that's really difficult, and that's sort of lost in the nuance of looking at numbers and data. And yeah, every day I'm feeling it, sadly. Wow. Yeah, it's hard.
I just feel like, the job is it seems so unique, but yet the system doesn't allow us for that kind of freedom of movement. You're sort of following a pattern and a path, not you, but, the midwives. Yeah. But yeah, each woman comes, like you say, with more needs or a particular request, and it's just you're not always able to fulfill that. So that must take its toll emotionally as well. How do you take care of you when you're feeling, overwhelmed and, I don't know what the term is, but, at your end of your tether, how it might be, and you're tired and you've done shift work and you're, you also have your family and your life outside of these four walls of the hospital. So, what do you do? How do you take care of you?
It's been a long process working out how I take care of me.
I hope you can share some words of wisdom about it.
Well, maybe I can. I don't know. I'm fortunate that I'm somebody who has a positive outlook on life in general. I have a very supportive family. Both my extended family and my immediate family are really supportive. So that categorically that helps. I say they're supportive. My children are not a fan of shift work or even midwifery, but I have had to learn the hard way, unfortunately. I've had some pretty rough times where I've been very low and I've considered not working in this career anymore. And it's from those that you learn how to take care of yourself. So there's things where I say I have to care less. And what that means is I don't care less about the woman in front of me. Of course not. I will always care about her. But I have to care less about what is thought of me, either by my colleagues or by that woman. I'll still give her 100%. But if I'm not her person, if we don't gel, that's not a reflection on me. That's just a reflection on the situation. I used to take that very personally, and that can eat away at you quite a lot because it gets to the core of who you are. So I've had to learn that. I've also had to realise I can't do everything. So in my previous jobs, you have a to-do list, you get through your to-do list and you go home. There's no end to the to-do list on this job, and sometimes you're handing over. In fact, just this week, I was in the throes of a woman having an epidural sited and probably about to have a baby at the same time. We weren't sure which was going to happen first. And another midwife came in to relieve me because it wasn't actually, it's a bit complicated. It wasn't actually the end of my shift, but I had to go and do something else work related. And I was like, not now. And they said, you have to go because you have to go and do this other thing. And I just thought, this is awful, leaving this poor woman in the throes. But I have to accept that that's beyond my control. Whereas before it still hurts. I do still take it home, but I'm learning better to handle those sorts of things. And then outside of work, it's all the cheesy stuff around eating well, going for a walk, talking with friends. I've taken up cricket.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm part of a ladies' team, and that's great. I can go and chat. But that can be hard as well because you can't always be open about your day at work because you don't know what other people's experiences are and whether or not it's triggering for them. So that's difficult. I have some close friends who I know I can talk to and I can be wholly open with. But then I have other people that I just have to be a bit more cautious around because it might be upsetting for them to hear what I've been through at work, and I don't want then that to be the cause of someone else's problems.
It's such a big juggle, and it's so, I mean, it's testament to you to have, like you say, to have actually been to the depths to then, you know, find ways to cope better and manage your time and how you're thinking and mindfulness and doing all those activities. But I hadn't actually thought about the impact of, you know, you wanting to vent from your day's work and how that impacts then others too, because that's a lot. And like you say, because you're in the hospital, you are seeing more traumatic experiences and events than perhaps, say, a home birth midwife or, you know, another member of your team. That's amazing.
It is. And I had some counselling at the front end of last year. There was some other stuff going on, work related a little bit, but predominantly home based. And it was a female counsellor. She was wonderful. And I was talking about a particularly traumatic event, and I noticed something in her. I think that's part of my job, is to read people and look at kind of non-verbal communication. And I noticed something in her twitch or move or quiver, and I thought, I can't go on with this story. She's relating to it in a way that's not comfortable. And I know that she has a child because we'd spoken about that. And I thought maybe this is what happened with her. Do you know what I mean? And I had to stop talking. And I thought, that's a shame. I'm in counselling to talk about some of this stuff. And I can't go on because I can see it's triggering her in a very mild way. And I know she's professional and she can handle it and she's got her own support network and what have you. But I notice that a lot if I'm talking to friends outside of work. Yeah, I can see that there's something in their head where they think, I don't think I want to hear this anymore. And so you think, okay, I have to stop because, and then where do you go? Where do you go?
Yeah. Where's your mothering space? Where's that, you know, who's taking care of the midwives? We talk a lot about who's mothering the mother, but actually who's mothering the mothers within the midwifery team and how you can kind of manage that. Because it is a lot, and there is a lot of talk about midwifery and trauma and, you know, what you do see on a daily basis. I mean, it shouldn't be happening, in my opinion. You know, it really shouldn't, but the fact is that it is. And women are witnessing it. Midwives are witnessing it. So, you know, not to bring it home, it must be very, very hard. And then when you do, how do you then, let it kind of dissipate, as it were? And I'm just going back to what you said about as well, having to leave halfway through or a birth. Now, to me, that is sort of shocking for both women in that space, because not only are you not sort of all the time and energy you're working with that woman, you know, encouraging her, holding space, being present, to then sort of not have the outcome closure of that whole, the cycle is not finished, basically, is it? This cyclical nation hasn't complete. And for the woman in birth, you know, to have you suddenly be there and then to be gone is also crazy. It's like another kind of severing of someone she's building trust and rapport with. And I guess with this whole episode about sort of the stranger, as it were, of the midwife, because continuity of care, I mean, how wonderful that you have that opportunity and experience, but a lot of women don't, you know, they're not able to see the same midwife. They're not able to go to the same clinic necessarily, or the same hospital, depending on what's going on. And actually, for me, in my own personal experience, that is the key to a lot of the outcomes in a positive way for mothers. So how do you how do you deal with that? I mean, do you get to contact the woman? Do you know there's a baby been born? Do you ever have any closure of that?
Yeah, so in the old days, pre-digitalisation of the notes, we might call the ward and say, could you just let me know how she got on? And could you just say I called and let her know that, you know, I'm thinking of her. Now we can look on the digital system, and it's another thing to go back to your previous question about how do you kind of switch off. We take that home with us. We take home an iPad with us, and I can access notes, so I can do work at home, but it does also mean I can go back through, or I can watch in real time, not watch, but, you know, see in real time what's happening, which is also actually there's positives and negatives to it. But if you're in the depths of work, it's not a positive thing to be watching, you know, a woman you've cared for and seeing kind of it unfold on the screen. But yeah, so in that instance, I went back onto her thing the next morning and saw that she had a lovely birth and was very happy, and that's great. But it's really hard, because, and actually that happens to a lot. That if you speak to some student midwives, you'll hear that's happening a lot for them. They're doing a lot of the labour care, and then they're not there to facilitate the birth, and that feels like to use your word, a severance. You know, it's kind of like, oh, I was so invested. And we are invested.
And to see it, I mean, the witness of that is the point. You know, for those student midwives to witness birth unfold is part of their learning, to see all the way through from start to finish, to actually be able to, really interesting, the idea of shift patterns. And should it be shift? I mean, I can go into whole other conversation. Should it be shift patterns, or should it just be working with that woman and then seeing it all the way through? I guess is another.
It should be
debate.
The latter, but the day that comes onto the scene will be a very happy day, because it will just take. That's what continuity is trying to do, but of course it takes more midwives because, well, in some ways it's obvious. If you're going to be with that one woman, then there has to be other midwives for the other women, sort of thing. And it's too difficult in the NHS system to work it, but I'd love to see that happen.
Okay,
that'd be great.
Watch this space.
Yeah, well, there we go.
And I mean, we should touch upon as well, it's not just the trauma of the birth itself, but obviously, you know, you're holding sometimes loss. You know, you're dancing on that precipice between life and death, which I think we all know. And what is that like emotionally, to walk that line? You know, it's the unknown, I guess, isn't it? The uncertainty. Do you struggle with that? Do you find that? Yeah.
Very much. And I think that's what's driving a lot of the kind of fear in midwifery, is nobody wants to be experiencing that. Of course we don't. So that's what drives a lot of the fear, which then leads to a little bit more intervention and more medicalisation. But my personal experience is very difficult. I remember caring for a lady who she had twins, and one of them didn't make it, one did, and it was just before Christmas. It was the 20th of December, and she was very religious. She was from another culture, and she had said that all along she was hoping her children would be born on Christmas Day to share a birthday with Jesus. So for her to lose a baby just 5 days before Christmas was terribly traumatic for her. She stayed in hospital because there was lots of complications with the baby that did make it, and also herself, and I cared for her every time I was in, including Christmas Eve into Christmas Day and things like that. And all the while, I'm going back to my home and actually Christmas is all about the birth of a baby. So everywhere you're going, people are talking about the birth of a baby. And I found that really difficult because, again, it comes back to my point. I wasn't really able to talk to anybody about it because no one wants to hear that. They want to sing carols about the birth of a baby. They don't want to hear the traumatic event about the baby that didn't make it and how that mother is coping. And so I had this, I remember I was in for about 10 days over the course of Christmas, and with her for each of those days. And that was just, really, really difficult to kind of go in and care for someone that's going through that, and then come out and put on like a joyful face because it's Christmas and it's my children's Christmas. And you feel a little bit two-faced sometimes, but also it does it does mess with you a little bit, because you have to kind of compartmentalize, that bit, put the lid back on it, go home, open this box up, and then put the lid back on that. And that's hard. That's really hard.
You're dancing in two realms there, aren't you? You are really on that kind of cusp. And yeah, I can appreciate that. It must be really, really, really difficult. So I'd love to know just a bit about you yourself in midwifery. Do you think it's changed how you see yourself, and maybe motherhood too, but how you see your body, how you perhaps walk around the world? Has that kind of impacted you on a more kind of outward level?
Yeah, definitely. As you know, I'm raising two girls as well. So I used to describe myself, this might not go down very well, but I used to describe myself as an anti-feminist, because when I was working in India, I was working for a charity, and then I had my daughter and I stopped working, and lots of people would say to me, what are you going to do next? What work are you going to do? And I used to say, well, I want to be at home with my daughter. And there was a bit of a kind of, but you shouldn't, you've worked hard to be a woman that can choose whatever she wants. You must choose work. And I used to find that quite difficult. So I'm very much of the mind women must choose what they want to do, and everything is valuable. But now I think I have become a little bit more, I'm very sort of pro-women, more than I used to be, perhaps. And I feel passionately that they should be seen and heard and all of that. And I try and instill that in my children, which they just laugh at. But that's okay, because they're still young. But it has changed, who I am, definitely. And it's really cheesy perhaps to say it, but I think midwifery is an identity. You wear it as an identity, and it's something that you are at your core. And that's wonderful, but also challenging for all the reasons I've said. So it's changed me as a person, and it's changed a lot about how I view all sorts of other people. So, you can maybe make a snap judgment about somebody, but actually what's beautiful about midwifery is that you really hear their story and you really understand what brought them to where they are today, and that makes you much more able to understand them and their situation. And I think I'm a much more understanding person than I was before. But yeah, it comes with its challenges around friendships and family, because there is perhaps a lack of understanding around the nature of your job. And I've had challenges with my own husband where he says, you're prioritising work over your own family. And it's not that I'm prioritising work, it's that work needs to be done, and I have to do it. So yeah, it has changed me on probably a cellular level.
Wow. Well, I can't deny that. I mean, it must have just been, it's transformative. I think even when even if you're not the woman giving birth at the time, just to be around the kind of orb of that is, every time you see it, and knowing that you're there for somebody and supporting somebody. And it's still one of the things we don't know, do we, exactly when babies are going to be born. So you can't plan your life around that. So that, like you say, has its challenges too. And what do you think, or what do you wish that people knew about women behind the uniform? Because we were talking about this when we had our coffee, weren't we? We were saying that you go into the hospital, maybe you meet your midwife, and there's another midwife, and you're all in the same uniform, and you all have that kind of, the same job role effectively. But obviously you're all individual women with individual lives and families and experiences and nuances and complexities. So yeah, I guess I wonder what you wish people knew about midwives when they sort of meet you for the first time.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think it's about what you've said there, individuality. And I think that's what we want as midwives. We want to treat the woman as an individual. And perhaps that's what kind of we want in return, is to be acknowledged as an individual, with all of those things that you said, experiences, nuances. And I always say that to women, you're always going to bring with you your previous experience, whether it's positive or negative. And I think as midwives, we're the same. We're going to bring with us, if we've had a really tragic outcome because of something that happened, we're never going to let that happen again, but that's going to impact the care we then give. I suppose it would be individuality. And you're right. I think obviously we have to wear a uniform. That's absolutely fine. But it does strip you a little bit of your personality and who you are beneath the uniform. But I also think that's what's lovely about being with a woman in labour and birth, is that it's about both of you. You are making a connection, and you are getting to know each other. And I think the women like that too. They like that reciprocal nature of,
I think
learning about you and who you are. And I think that gives them something to go with.
It's important. I mean, you are building a rapport, aren't you? And that's what's so lovely. I mean, I had the experience of having continuity care with a home birth team, and I'm still in touch with her now, you know, and it's, you know, she's spending all the time with you. And I think time is crucial, because not necessarily do you have that when you're in shift work or you're, you know, working with more than one woman at a time. It's very hard to necessarily have all that time with that same person. But these women are coming to you at their most vulnerable, in their rawest state, frightened most of the time, at least scared on some level. And, you know, you're their first face they're going to see, and they want someone to kind of bring that energy of encouragement and safety and trust. And I'm sure you bring it in the bucketfuls, but, you know, that sense of just trusting that birth will play out and I'm here to help you. And it's hard to get that across from, you know, a few moments initially. It is to build that trust. But you touched upon a bit earlier on about saying, you know, you're sort of caring less about how people respond to you necessarily as an individual. Have you had any instances where, because I always tell the women that I work with that if they don't gel with their midwife, they are absolutely in their right to ask maybe for somebody else, or if they could see if there was someone else on shift, just to have a conversation with, a bit like a second opinion, I guess.
Absolutely.
Which obviously you can take it really personally. Like, I can totally appreciate why. But would you agree with me with that? Would you definitely?
Wholeheartedly. Yeah, I'd agree with you wholeheartedly. I think you've said it. These women are vulnerable and they're relying wholly on this other person in the room with them to hold them, support them, guide them. If you're not feeling it, you're not going to have any oxytocin for starters. Your cortisol is going to be soaring. None of that is conducive to a positive experience, never mind a good outcome. So I always say, if you know, it's awkward, of course it is, but if you want to say that we're not gelling, you just, you know, I sort of say to them, I don't know how you're going to go about it, but you'll find a way, and it's absolutely fine to do it. And I know you're desperate to ask, has it ever happened to me? And yes, it has.
I didn't want to say out loud. No, I know, but it's you touched upon it. I mean, I think it would happen to everyone, but it's so primal.
Yeah.
It's such a primal thing. If you don't, it's like we're not all going to like everybody in the world, and not everybody all likes us.
No, absolutely. And that's hard to understand, like, because you try your best and you want to give your best. But I was a student midwife and I was doing my best studenting. I was there by her bedside, telling her to breathe, listening to her, you're doing great. And she just looked at her partner and very loudly said, this woman is doing my head in. And I was like, oh, okay.
Not your girl.
Not my girl. Luckily, I was only doing break relief, so I only had to do an hour. And then I sort of said to the midwife, shall we swap? Shall I do the writing and you do the midwifing? Because she's not liking me. But that's okay. I learned from that. Yeah. That's fine.
But I think it's also very powerful for the woman, you know, knowing that this is her birth space and this is her birth team, and actually to have the power to actually be able to say, you know, if it really isn't feeling right, you've got to feel safe. And sometimes you're just going to clash with people, and you just have to, try and be brave and express your opinions in a polite manner, maybe, but maybe in labour. Well, that can be just sidelined.
I was about to say, we often say we don't mind how we're spoken to in labour, but I did work with a midwife once who said, no, I do mind, because it's key to who they are. So if they're being rude to me, that's who they are. But actually, I'm of the mind that you're just in a different world, and you just need to say these things and get them off your chest, and that's okay. I have got a thick skin. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. So thinking about kind of the wisdom, I guess, for the next generation, maybe of midwives, but also of women. I mean, what was your best advice? I mean, this is such a big question. I ask it all the time, you know, for first-time mums. And I know I should have mentioned at the beginning, but, you know, you have this incredible holistic approach, the amiable approach, which you have designed yourself. And it's obviously we share that passion of, you know, holistic birth education. But, you know, what do you find that first-time mums are lacking, or that you feel they need the most in an advisory way?
I think it's autonomy. I think they don't realise that they can ask questions, they can say no, they can ask for an alternative opinion. I think that they beautifully put their whole selves into our hands, and that's great, and we will do our very best to keep them safe, but they don't have to do everything that is offered to them or recommended for them. And I think for them to just know that they can ask the question, is there another option? And I say that a lot, particularly around induction. And again, I'm fortunate that I work in a continuity of care team, so I can start that conversation really early in pregnancy when they're not quite as heavy, vulnerable, uncomfortable, not sleeping. worried. And I can say, you're going to be offered an induction at some point. Please know that you don't have to accept it. There are a variety of reasons why you might be offered it and why you might not be. Open up a conversation.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're asking the questions. That's what I would want for first-time mums to know, is that you can say no and you can ask for an alternative opinion.
Great, thank you. And just from your experience, are there any misconceptions that you think, maybe like, debunking some myths, but misconceptions of midwives that you would like to correct? Is there something you think, we're always told we're this, or we're always thought like this, or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a few. 3 popped into my head as you said that. One is that they're that sort of dowdy kind of old lady that's maybe a bit grumpy and what have you. I have never met a midwife like that. Most are pretty passionate and driven and quite courageous people. So that's one. The second is that it slipped my mind, so I'm going to have to come back to it. That's perimenopause for you. So we might have to come back to that. What were they?
Don't worry. It's so people. I mean, that kind of impression of a midwife. You got it. Go.
So the other 2 are kind of opposite to each other. One is that when I say to people I'm a midwife, they usually kind of cock their head to the side, go a bit doughy-eyed, and say, "Oh, that must be amazing." And you think, yeah, but you think you have no idea how hard it is. So that I suppose I want people to know it's hard, and it's more than just about the birth. It's about the antenatal care, the postnatal care. It's about the holistic nature of it. It's about, the social side, the mental health side. All of that is, there's so much more to it. So there's that. And I said there were 3 things. They will come back to me. They will come back to me.
But I mean, that is really interesting you say about that kind of, we'll touch on I love the idea of talking about the 4th trimester, because we're so focused, I think, and I've probably said this before, but we're so focused on the actual birth, of preparing to have a baby, of actually, psyching ourselves up. This baby's got to come out somehow. But we forget entirely that there's this whole other 3 months to follow where we're really just crossing this threshold from maiden to mother, where our whole body is transforming, our brain is changing, the chemistry is changing, we're growing babies, milk is being produced, all of these intense kind of shifts, and we're never talking about it really.
No.
I mean, there's more talk about matrescence now, but really not that long ago, where we just sort of like, yep, baby's done, and into back home you go, and then it'd be like handed over to the midwife for a week and then the health visitor. And actually, for me, that is the most tender time. And, you're still working in that time with these women, and you're still there to support and help and guide. So, it doesn't finish when the baby is born. So that night you go home after, another baby, there's still more to do. And do you find that time of life, that time of motherhood, would you want to see more done?
Definitely.
Or,
I think we really let women down in the postnatal period, generally. As a society, I think we do, particularly in our culture. There's this absolute expectation that you are back in your skinny jeans, holding a latte, pushing the pram along the pavement, looking great, feeling great, loving life, #blessed. Like, I just don't buy into it. I would much rather the Eastern culture, where you have 100 days of confinement, where the whole purpose of that time is to be brought food that is going to help with your lactation and help with your healing and help with your recovery. You're going to be just bonding with your baby. People are there for you rather than you having to put on a brave face. I think that we really need a massive shift, and I think it starts there, because as a parent to older children, those expectations are still there of you as a mother. And it starts at birth, and it starts in those first kind of 3 months. I will always advocate for women to just do as little as possible and to let go of that kind of pressure of having to perform, essentially, and put on a brave face, because we need to be bringing down those walls quite significantly. And I think as a service, we don't. Again, I'm fortunate I work in a continuity of care, and we care for these women up to a month after their baby's born. That doesn't happen nationally. So that's wonderful, because also usually around the 10-day mark, they're kind of at their lowest ebb. and we have to hand them over at that point. Whereas to hold on to them for a month feels great, because by then they are going maybe to consider a baby group or something, and they're starting to sort of eke back into society. And that feels really nice to see them actually go full circle. But no, to answer your question, I think a lot more needs to be done societally as much as, health-wise.
It's just the idea, isn't it, of just the magnitude of what's just happened. If we strip it back, that you have just literally brought new life into the world. You have stepped and become a creatrix, and then it's like, back we go. Yeah. And it's like this idea, I love the idea of, spend the first 2 weeks in bed, spend the next 2 weeks on the bed, spend the next 2 weeks in the bedroom, and just slow it all down, rather than just fast-paced rush, because your body is healing, your mind is healing, you're getting to know your baby, a relationship is forming, your whole body has shifted and changed. And yeah, I hear
it's
you.
A lot. Yeah, it's a lot to go through. And I think as a service, we are all over women during the antenatal period, and then we metaphorically drop kick them out the door and say good luck once the baby's born. And that's when it's happened now. That's the big part. And we're not necessarily there for them. So
okay, but
that's where postnatal doulas come in. So
that's true. Oh, I mean, anybody can be a postnatal doula, I think. My mother was a postnatal doula for me. She's not entitled. And, it's just showing that love and care and knowing that more needs to be done, or less jobs need to be taken away from the mother in order for her just to bond with her baby and then do the rest. Yeah. So just thinking about midwives from times gone by, how would you think they would be looking down now on midwifery? Thinking back to way back to maybe the wise women on the edge of the forest with the herbs that were needed, what would you imagine they'd be saying if they were looking at midwifery now?
Oh, Amy, I think they'd be a bit sad.
Do you think?
Yeah, I do.
Well, I mean, I'm not leading. This is a leading question, but it's interesting.
I do think they'd be a bit sad. I think we still have those midwives to exist.
Yeah.
And praise be for that, because we need them. But if we look at the service and hospital kind of midwives, I think those ancient midwives would be a bit sad. I think that we're less linked with our intuition now, and we're more driven by policy and guideline. And I think that's a bit of a shame. And I don't know if that will change. I'm not sure, but I think they'd still see in us what they have in themselves, which is that kind of courage and bravery, is that the word? To be on that threshold of life and death, and bringing forth of new life. So I think that resembles, that's still there, but I think they might be a bit sad as to how the whole system has changed and become.
Oh, there's definitely a food for thought about that. And as midwife as a profession, midwifery as a profession, you're here now and you're doing it and you're in a continuity care team. Do you see I don't know, maybe it's too big a question, but how do you see your kind of roles expanding, and how do you see your kind of voice being heard? Because I know now you're doing your own kind of birth preparation, which is amazing, and having that offering for women is so essential, especially now lots of hospitals are cutting their kind of antenatal care antenatal education. Thank you. Where does Amy see herself stepping into the next kind of few months, weeks,
big
years?
Question. Big question. I don't know. I have days where I think, and yesterday was one of them, curiously. I had a day where I thought, this is all I ever want to do. I had clinic in the morning, visits in the afternoon. It was a beautiful day. Everything kind of went well. I had time to do what I wanted to do. And I thought, this is what I was born to do. This is what I love doing. It doesn't get boring because everyone is different. That was a fabulous day. And then I have other days where I think, I just don't know if I can keep doing this. It's too hard. It's too stressful. It's too much of an impact on my family. So, yeah, I don't know is the short answer. I hope that, we can get to a point where maternity services is able to just offer a bit more to women, because then we'll hold on to more midwives, and that will be beneficial to everybody. That'll be beneficial to midwives and women as a consequence. But I don't know if that's a helpful answer, but it's the truthful one.
No, truth is great. And
know.
It's so nice to hear from a real midwife who is really working, who is really doing it. I think it just makes a big difference, especially for those listening and watching, because you are you and you are there doing it on the front line, as it were. So thank you for being so honest. And as always on my episodes, we finish with this idea of what would you gift a woman on this pathway, whether it's either preconception, pregnancy or birth or beyond. But because you are midwife, I think it's best to kind of to share the gift for pregnancy, if that's what you wish to, just something they can take with them to put into place, or a little bit of advice from you.
I think belief. Just belief in it's maybe considered, a bit too wishy-washy, but belief in themselves that they, not even that they can do it, they can. Women have been doing it for eons, but that they will make the right choices for them. And that's critical, I think, is that, again, the societal pressure to do it a certain way can be really, really a big driving factor for women. And I think that's a shame. I would love for women to just have the belief in themselves that what decisions they make for themselves are right for them, and that they made those decisions with the information they had at that time. We can't see into the future and then think, I wish I'd done it some way differently. So yeah, I think belief is key, and perhaps, if I'm allowed to just go back to that autonomy, that just knowing that you've got the right to say yes please or no thank you, and we're not going to judge you any differently for that.
Thank you so much. Wise words. It's been so lovely to have you, Amy. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time on the Pregnancy Playbook.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy.